War, it has shaped empires, ended dynasties, and redrawn maps. But behind every historic victory or devastating defeat lies something darker. Bloodshed on a scale that's almost impossible to comprehend. In today's video, we re-diving into history's bloodiest battles. You won to believe what happened in number 4. These aren't just battles. They nightmares made real. Each one is a staggering story of human endurance, chaos, and unimaginable violence. Whether fought with swords or rifles, in deserts or frozen fields, these are the clashes that changed the course of history and cost more lives than entire cities. So stay until the end. Because what happened in battle number 4 is one of the most shocking moments ever recorded in warfare. We begin with the Battle of Stalingrad, considered the bloodiest battle in human history, fought between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union from 1942 to 1943. This World War II clash wasn't just a military operation, it was a brutal war of attrition. Over 2 million soldiers and civilians were killed, wounded, or captured. The Germans were unprepared for the Russian winter, and the Soviets fought block by block in a devastated city, turning every basement and every building into a fortress. Starvation, frostbite, and constant bombardments made survival a miracle. But in the end, it marked a turning point in the war. Hitler's forces would never fully recover from the loss. The cost, an entire city reduced to ruins and generations scarred by suffering. Next, we move back in time to the Battle of Cannae, fought in 216 BC during the Second Punic War. Here, the Carthaginian general Hannibal delivered one of the most brilliant and deadly military maneuvers ever recorded. Outnumbered by a Roman force twice the size of his own, Hannibal encircled the enemy using a double envelopment strategy. In a single day, up to 70,000 Roman soldiers were killed. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse, and the Roman Republic was left in shock. Historians still study Hannibal's tactics in military academies today, but behind the brilliance lies horror-y kind of close combat. It's massacre that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. Our third battle is the Battle of the Somme, a World War I tragedy that unfolded over 141 days in 1916. British and French forces faced off against Germany in one of the most infamous trench warfare campaigns of all time. On the very first day alone, the British suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, making it the deadliest single day in British military history. Soldiers lived, fought, and died in mud-filled trenches, often for mere meters of land. In total, over 1 million men were killed or wounded. And what did they gain? Almost nothing. The horror of the Somme is a stark reminder of how industrial warfare can devour lives in the name of progress, how sometimes even victory feels like defeat. And now, battle number 4. You might want to brace yourself, because the Siege of Leningrad, which lasted from 1941 to 1944, wasn't just a battle, it was a slow-motion apocalypse. Nazi Germany and Finnish forces surrounded the Soviet city for 872 days, cutting off food, fuel, and supplies to over 3 million civilians. What followed was unthinkable. Over 1 million people died, many from starvation, disease, and hypothermia. Bread was made from sawdust. Pets, rats, even wallpaper paste were eaten. Entire families froze to death in their apartments. And yet, despite it, all Leningrad never surrendered. The people endured. This was not just a military resistance. It was a human miracle born from unimaginable suffering. That's why it stands as one of the darkest, most haunting episodes in all of war history. Let's step into ancient history with number 5, the Battle of Gaugamela, fought in 331 BC between Alexander the Great and the Persian king Darius III. This battle was monumental not just in scale, but in consequence. Facing a Persian army that massively outnumbered his own, Alexander used superior tactics and leadership to secure a decisive victory. Estimates suggest up to 300,000 soldiers fought that day with over 50,000 killed. This battle marked the collapse of the Persian Empire and the rise of Hellenistic culture across 3 continents. But behind the glory was carnage on a biblical scale, war elephants charging into human formations, cavalry slashing through flesh, and rivers of blood on the plains of modern-day Iraq. Number 6 is modern and mechanized, the Battle of Berlin, 1945. This final confrontation of World War II in Europe saw Soviet forces storm the German capital. Over 2 million Soviet soldiers clashed with Nazi defenders in brutal street-to-street combat. Tanks roared down avenues while artillery leveled entire city blocks. Civilians hid in basements while snipers turned rooftops into execution platforms. Hitler's bunker became the symbol of a regime in collapse. By the end, more than 800,000 people were dead or wounded. Berlin fell, but the scars of the battle would linger for generations, etched into every brick and buried under every memorial.
Ow.
Our seventh battle, the Battle of Gettysburg, may be America's most famous. In July 1863, during the American Civil War, Union and Confederate forces clashed in a brutal three-day encounter. Nearly 50,000 casualties were reported, making it the deadliest battle ever fought on American soil. The fighting was relentless. Cemetery Hill, Little Round Top, Pickett's Charge, each name soaked in blood. Gettysburg wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point, and it reshaped the fate of a divided nation. But behind the textbooks and speeches are the forgotten faces: teenagers fighting grown men, brothers killing brothers, and towns turned into mass graves. At number 8, the Battle of Okinawa reminds us of the cost of island warfare. Fought in 1945 between the United States and Imperial Japan, it was one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War. Over 240,000 lives were lost, including tens of thousands of civilians. The Japanese used kamikaze attacks, underground tunnels, and suicide missions to resist the American advance. Children were caught in the crossfire. Entire families took their own lives to avoid capture. It was brutal, tragic, and unforgettable. And it set the stage for the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that followed shortly after. Number 9 is the lesser-known but equally devastating Battle of the Yellow River, fought during the Chinese Civil War in 1938. In a desperate move to stop the Japanese advance, Chinese forces destroyed dikes along the Yellow River, unleashing a catastrophic flood. It drowned hundreds of thousands, mostly civilians. The flood turned farmland into swamps, displacing millions and creating a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions. It was a cruel strategy, sacrificing your own people to delay an enemy, and the cost. Generations of suffering, famine, and disease in the wake of man-made destruction. Finally, we arrive at number 10, the Battle of Verdun. Fought in 1916 between France and Germany, this World War I nightmare lasted 300 days. The aim? To bleed France dry. What unfolded was one of the longest and most grueling battles in history. Over 700,000 casualties, with many more mentally shattered by the relentless artillery shelling. Some villages were so obliterated they were never rebuilt. Declared dead zones where nothing could live again. Verdun became a symbol of French resistance, but also a symbol of how war can chew up entire generations and leave only mud, bone, and silence behind. These battles weren't just history, they were turning points paid in blood. From ancient fields to modern cities, from icy sieges to jungle ambushes, they show the true price of power, pride, and politics. But beyond the numbers and strategies, these were real human beings. Fathers, sons, daughters, friends, people who never came home. And that's why we tell these stories, to remember, to reflect, and to remind ourselves that war may shape nations, but it destroys lives. If you learned something new today, do your part to keep history alive. Hit that like button. And subscribe to the channel for more videos that uncover the raw, unfiltered side of our past. Comment below. Which of these battles shocked you the most, or did we miss one you think deserves to be in the top 10? Let your voice be heard and let history never be forgotten.